Welcome to The Art of Show, where we feature the people who are creating amazing stories for kids. Join us as we chat with children's book illustrators and authors, storyboardists, animators, and more. Now, their art might be for kids, but aren't we all just kids at heart? Here's your host, Brandon.
What is up, guys? Welcome back to The Art of Show. This is episode number 13. Recently, we actually had a Friday the 13th, so hopefully nothing too strange happened to you guys. But I hope you guys are having an amazing January and a great start to 2017. I've got a real fun interview for you guys this week that actually combines two of my favorite things. One is animation, especially anything to do with Pixar and or Disney, especially recently. And the second is kids' books. And so this week we actually have a combination of the two. But before we get into that, a couple updates for you. First and foremost, if you like what we're doing over here at The Art of Show, first I'd love just to hear from you. Hit me up on Twitter at brcullum, or you can also check me out at brandoncullum.com. And I would just love to know what you think. Maybe if you like something different, maybe you want these intros to be shorter, maybe you want me to get different guests, just hit me up and let me know. Also, this show is actually over on YouTube as well, so if you want to see my not so amazing face, you can totally do that. But you really can check out the interviewees as we're interviewing them. So you can check that out over at YouTube. If you just look for The Art of Show, it will pull up. And last but not least, I would love, if you guys do like the show, if you can head over to iTunes and leave me a rating and review. And I know you guys hear that a lot, but if you like it, it would really help the show grow, and as well as help me get some pretty cool guests on. So if you guys can do that, that'll be great. But let's get into this week's interview. We're chatting with Andy Harkness, and Andy's official title, he actually is one of the art directors with Walt Disney, is his current day job. Actually, when I called him, so this was just a phone interview, he was on his way to work, driving through LA traffic. But he has been on everything, like all the way back to Pocahontas. We actually talk about how he's been in one way or another involved in a ton of Disney movies. And most recently, he was actually working on the environments in color in Moana. And so I love the art of books. That's kind of the inspiration for the show name. And so I got the art of Moana and I'm flipping through, and you see these great environments designed by Andy. And what was really neat is he also has put out a kids book, and it's called Bug Zoo. And the way these connect is inside of Bug Zoo, you'll flip through the illustrations, and they'll look really realistic, but kind of stylized. And what's cool is he actually makes these clay sculptures of a bunch of different types of bugs, and then he paints them digitally in Photoshop, which is really cool. I've never seen anyone do it, and the style is super amazing. It's an amazing book. I encourage you guys to check it out. We really dive into it. But then on the other side with Disney, when you're flipping through the Art of Moana book, you see the actual landscapes that he did for Moana were also sculpted. And he was saying that was based off the work that he was doing in Bug Zoo. So it's cool to see kind of how your side project influences your day job and vice versa. He's an amazing artist, an amazing storyteller. It's an amazing book. So hope you guys enjoy this interview with Andy, and let's dive right in. So we want to welcome Andy Harkness with us today, hanging out on The Art of Show. He is currently in a car somewhere in California, in LA, is that right? Driving through traffic?
That's right, driving through traffic.
Are you driving? Or
favorite thing to do in the morning?
Are you just sitting right now?
I'm driving, so at least I'm moving.
That's good.
Always a good sign.
Yeah, I used to live in Atlanta, and the traffic I'm sure isn't as bad as LA, but man, I'd get so mad in the mornings just sitting there, not being able to do anything.
Yeah, you know what? I've heard Atlanta is getting up there now with Los Angeles in terms of traffic.
Shoot, it's pretty rough. Yeah, it's not a ton of fun. I live about an hour and a half outside of it now, and my commute is like country roads, and so it's nothing bad in the mornings for me. So.
Oh, I'm jealous. I'm from Mississippi, so I miss the country roads. I really do.
Yeah, and that's actually, I'd love to kind of get into your story. And I didn't mention it before we got going, but I'm also from Mississippi. I'm from Oxford, but my brother goes to Mississippi State, so we're big Mississippi State fans. So I was going through there, and I was like, Starkville, Mississippi. Like, I usually don't see that in someone's bio. So that's real cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, my dad taught veterinary medicine at Mississippi State University for 20 plus years, and so we moved there when I was 12 years old.
Okay, cool.
And yeah, I was in Starkville all the way through graduation, high school graduation.
Very cool. Did so was art, was that a piece of your story while you were growing up? Was it just something you kind of naturally did?
Yeah, I just could never imagine doing anything else. And I'm not very good at anything else. So it was like, I always felt it was my only option, and
Yeah.
I was so happy about that, you know. But yeah, even as a little kid, loved to draw, and I think it was Picasso actually that said he spent his whole life learning how to draw like a kid, that untrained style, and I think that is something I'm always searching for too. When you go and you're trained in art through high school and then in college, you learn all these things that are fantastic and wonderful. But I'm constantly trying to break those, to get back to that raw, just natural. You see it in folk art, folk art, F-O-L-K, a lot, and it's just kind of a natural, raw interpretation of what the artist sees. And yeah, anyway, I'm going for a loop here, but that's something I've always strived to get back to, especially with the children's books, and trying to find that raw first impression in a way.
Yeah. So you were formally trained, is that right? And did you go to school in Ohio? Did I see that for college?
Yes, I went to school at Columbus College of Art and Design for 2 years, and I came back I really missed the South and missed Mississippi, and I came back home, and I worked in a grocery store at night and drew during the day, and took a couple classes in Mississippi State University. And I think I was about, I was 20 years old. I was still in contact with a friend that was going to school in Ohio, and he said that Disney was ramping up. This is pre-Lion King, and right after Aladdin.
Gotcha.
Right in that time, Disney was really starting to boom, and they were having these internships, 2 or 3 a year. And he gave me the address to send my work to, and I didn't have, I wasn't really in a lot of art classes at that time, but I had a lot of work that I had done at school, and I was drawing on South Farm at Mississippi State, cows and horses and everything else, and a lot of time on my hands at that point, and I did the best I could. My plan was to fill a portfolio and then go back through it and keep the best 3 drawings from that portfolio and trash the rest, and then get the portfolio up to that level, the whole thing. I did that 3 times, and I sent it off, and on my 21st birthday, I got the call from Disney that I got the internship.
That's awesome.
And that was a magnificent day, I'll tell you. It
Yeah.
was great.
Was that in Florida at the time, or was that in California?
The internship was in Florida, in Orlando. And at that point, Disney had a studio in Canada. They had one in Paris, Orlando, and LA was the main base of everything. The other studios were all kind of satellite studios. We helped out with the films.
Yeah, what was it like being a kid drawing animals on farms in Middle Mississippi, like to go into Disney and working on those movies?
It was honestly overwhelming. Absolutely overwhelming. And like I said before, I always knew I wanted to be an artist, but it wasn't until I got to college that I caught the Disney bug, and I wanted to be there so badly. But I do remember the drive there. I had a Geo Prism. It was my very first car, and all I had was an alarm clock. I was determined to kind of just do it all myself.
Yeah.
I was going to get the apartment and do it all myself. And, it was like a dream. It really was a dream. And I remember during the internship, an effects artist let me draw a leaf on Lion King, and it still is in the top 10 best days of my life. Honestly, it was to draw that leaf for that movie. And, yeah, it's fantastic. I've been with Disney for 23 years, and it's lost a little bit of that luster, but not much. There's still, most days I walk in skipping.
Yeah.
Just can't believe I'm still doing this for a living, and pretty amazing.
Are there other moments that stand out like that, like drawing the leaf on Lion King, as you think back through your years? I mean, you've worked on all kinds of stuff. I'm going through just your IMDb. I mean, everything from Hunchback of Notre Dame to Bolt and Mulan, Zootopia. I mean, you've been all over the board.
Yeah, I've been lucky. Now that Disney's making so many movies, I'm going to miss a couple. You're on one and you're going to miss the couple as they're being made. But I've worked on almost everything all the way up. And yeah, there were a couple moments. There was one night during my internship, and what I wanted to do was be the first one in the door in the morning and the last one to leave at night. That was just what I wanted to do. I was determined to get that job, and it wasn't promised to you during the internship. But I remember walking into an office. The door was open, the light was on, and I was snooping around. And I walked in there, and on the walls were these color keys. And I had no idea what I was looking at. And it turns out that it was the office of the art director of Mulan.
Okay.
And and I later talked to him. I went in there and bugged him and asked him something. It was like lightning hit that day. That's all I wanted to do at that point was to art direct. And there's something about laying out color for a film, for the first frame to the final frame. There's almost a science to it.
Uh-huh.
And I'd never thought about that before. So that was one of those moments. The second moment is when I finally did get that job, and which was amazing. I got that job when I was still in Florida after I'd been there for 10 years. And 2 weeks later, the studio shut down. And that's just something that happens. It was a terrifying, scary thing to go through. But, it kind of, I guess what it did is it tested how much I really wanted to do this job and if I wanted to pursue and continue. And at that point, there were no other options in Florida. You had to move to California. And that's where everything was. And it was terrifying for a moment and exhilarating after that. And I made the move, came out here, and I was actually at Sony for 2 years.
Okay.
I took a break from Disney for 2 years, and I art directed a movie called Open Seasons.
Oh, yeah.
It was my very first art directing job. First time ever really doing color. I'd only worked kind of in black and white up to that point. And it was a trial by fire. It really was. It was my first 3D movie.
Yeah.
And first time really doing color. So it took a long time, but I feel like everything that led up to that job, I wouldn't trade for the world.
So what was it like transitioning from hand-drawn into 3D, going to different mediums kind of in that period?
It was a huge learning curve. When you're in college, your brain is just it's like clay. You absorb everything. You want to learn everything. And 10 years out of college, my brain had hardened a little bit. and suddenly, it was time to learn a new trade. And I started with Photoshop.
Okay.
And luckily, I had a long time to learn. For me, it took me about 2.5, 3 years to really get comfortable with working in Photoshop. I tried working in Maya and just never took. Some people did, and they went into other realms of 3D, modeling and all that. But so for me, really, the only path at that point was to go into visual development and stay with Photoshop, and everything was going to go in that direction. So, the way I look at it now is it doesn't, like any tool, learning watercolor and all the skills and all the rules of watercolor doesn't necessarily make you a great watercolor painter. And the same with Photoshop. I think it can make things look shinier and neatly wrapped packaged, but it doesn't necessarily make great paintings out of the box. And it's just another tool. It's like anything else. It's just another tool. But I crave traditional, and I always have, and clay and painting. That'll always be a huge part of what I do.
Yeah, that's so cool. Would you say being able to work in different mediums, you mentioned just you're having to learn to draw as a kid over and over again. Has that helped you? Just you kind of transition to different ways of working?
Yeah, I think it has. Absolutely. When I'm working in Photoshop, sometimes I'll make brushes, or I'll borrow a brush from someone that is like a watercolor brush or an oil brush. And these are digital brushes. And because I've painted traditionally, I know what watercolor should look like. And how the paint should react to the water and the paper and everything like that. Had I not learned how to do that, I don't think that it would be as convincing in Photoshop. There's different with watercolor. The true white is the white of the paper, and oil white is opaque. You got to apply the paint; it's more additive. So all those things I've learned, yeah, absolutely come into play when I'm painting digitally.
That's cool. All right, so during all this time, I imagine you're super busy, but then you're also submitting this idea for a kid's book. Is that right? Kind of and for folks that may not know, because I know it's definitely different with Disney and Hyperion, kind of how that process work, and where did just the notion of wanting to do a book come from?
sure. Well, the original dream, my very first dream was to do a kid's book, and that's from second grade on.
Okay, so that was even before movies and any of that.
Yes.
What was your?
That's what I.
Sorry, what was your favorite book growing up?
My favorite book growing up was a book called The Five Chinese Brothers.
Okay.
And in second grade, that was the book that we all basically fought over to take home over the weekend. And if I got that book to take home, I was so happy.
That's
and
awesome.
I couldn't get it. I was depressed the whole weekend.
Yeah.
And I as a kid, drawing in school, we'd have to write little stories, and I loved illustrating them. It was something that was connected to my soul. It was illustrating a book. Is what I always wanted to do. And I got off the track a little bit with different things, and it's hard. Getting a book published is incredibly hard. As I got older, what I wanted to do was Disney and different things, but the idea of doing a kid's book was always in the back of my mind. And I think it was maybe right around the time I went to Los Angeles.
Okay.
Is when I started thinking it's time to do this. And that was 10 years into my career at Disney. It's time to do a book. And what I love is bugs. I love bugs, especially butterflies. I used to hunt them down, and I spent many, if I wasn't painting or drawing, I was catching bugs.
Okay.
That's my second love.
Yeah.
And they always say, if you're going to write about something you're going to know it better than anybody. And so it's kind of loosely based on the experience I had when I was a kid with my catching a huge butterfly in Australia with my dad. And what happened was I caught this thing, and we were camping, and it was in a bag. And when I woke up the next day, ants had come and eaten the whole butterfly, almost everything. And I remember having this sick feeling of, that butterfly was really not mine to take, and nature took it back. I remember thinking that, but I felt sick about it. I couldn't really process it as a 12-year-old. But the idea was percolating for a long, long time. And I wrote the story, and it was about a little boy who loved to hunt bugs and catch bugs. And I sent it off to a publisher, and I never heard back. And so then I was at Sony, and through connections there was a bookstore in Santa Monica that if they liked your book, it was possible they could pass it on to get published. I took it in there. I waited for months. I never heard back. I went in. Turns out they'd never even taken it out from under the counter. And it was a very humbling thing to go through. And but I guess that's the message I really want to convey, is that expect a lot of failure. And it's almost a test to how bad you want it.
Right.
And I couldn't, as upset as I was that it wasn't getting made, I couldn't give up on this thing, All along I had my animation career that was going along and paying the bills, but man, I wanted this book to go, And so, and then another friend of mine named Carter.
What was it?
Sorry, go ahead.
What was it that kept bringing you back to that? You said you really, you got to have perseverance. Why was it that you wanted that book out there?
For me, it's that feeling I had when I was in second grade of having that book in my hands and opening it up, and it just transports you to another world. Yeah. Completely. And I really wanted to make a book that made kids feel that way. And that was always the goal. It was connected to that feeling I had when I was in second grade.
Gotcha. That's so cool.
And finally, to be honest with you, I kind of gave up after I just told you that, never give up. I kind of gave up. And
yeah.
I boxed that book up and I put it away, and I thought maybe it's never going to get done. And then John Lasseter, who is the creative executive at Disney, he's kind of our Walt Disney at Disney, he put out an email saying that we want to start a children's book program at Disney. We have it going at Pixar, and anyone who works here can submit an idea, and we'd love to see what you guys come up with. And we're going to make one of these ideas is going to become a book, and we're going to do it every year. And so I put this idea together, and instead of submitting a whole long story, which was really long, I just submitted the premise for the book and a couple of giant watercolor illustrations I had done a couple of years before. And the book got picked. It got picked to be made. And I tell you, that was one of the greatest days. I'm talking about those great days in your life. That was fantastic, because I wanted it for so long, and finally, but it was still 3 years before this book got made. Why? Because I was too stubborn to admit that I couldn't write it. I just don't have the writing chops.
Gotcha.
I have the idea chops and illustration chops. The writing was keeping it down. And finally, they said, "Why don't we get a writer on this thing?" And I said, "Okay, let's do it."
Yeah.
And she wrote it. Her name is Lisa Wheeler. She wrote it overnight. It was done.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And then I illustrated the book, and that's it. Yeah, made.
What was it like getting the story back from her? Because we've had some authors on the show, kids book authors, and they talk about what it's like to get the visuals back. But I don't know if we've ever heard it from the illustrator side of things. Like this story you've been working on so long, and you want to get it out there, but then that story comes back with fresh eyes. What was that like?
Well, I was very skeptical. I was looking at it with very skeptical eyes.
Uh-huh.
I was so close to the story, and I wanted to make sure that she captured the love for bugs that I felt when I was a kid.
Yeah, yeah.
And she hit every mark. She wrote it. When I first saw it, I thought, well, it's written for a slightly younger audience than I originally imagined. I was thinking maybe 7 to 8 year olds, and I think this book really is perfect for 5, 6, maybe 7 year olds. That's really kind of the right range for kids for this book.
Okay.
That was my first impression. I think, oh my God, it's written for maybe someone too young. But as I read it, I'm like, wow, she captured exactly how I felt and the gist of the story. And she did it in really minimal words. I was way overphrasing everything. And like I said to do. So, I loved it. It took a beat, and then I read it, and I absolutely loved it. And I thought she hit it right on the mark.
That's so cool. So it gets accepted. You get the story back, and you mentioned, and we were talking about this before when we went live, that these were watercolor paintings that they got submitted on. But then, where did the idea of doing actual sculptures for the illustrations? Where did that come from?
All right, so I'm just very impatient as a human being. So I always have been. I've actually been turned away from art schools because my styles were too different.
Yeah, yeah.
Artists that had more of a unique style, and that's just always something that's been part of me. So these watercolors were done a couple of years ago, and when it was time to make the book, I started another watercolor because that's what John Lasseter was the one that actually greenlit this book to be made.
Oh wow!
Based
Okay.
on these watercolors. So as I'm halfway through this watercolor, I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
I don't want to do watercolor anymore, and at least for this book.
And these are large canvases, is that right?
They are. They're about 3 feet by 2 feet.
Okay, gotcha.
I'm hanging at home right now.
Yeah, I feel like I've seen a picture where, like, you have your daughter in your lap or your son in your lap, and you're painting this massive. It like there's a bug involved. So.
Yep, that was one of them. That was
That's
one of the early ones. And so I think because of my love for bugs, I wanted to make it really feel like you could just reach in and grab a bug off the page.
Yeah.
That would feel. Well, maybe clay. Maybe this could be an approach. So I tried a couple of illustrations, and I took it back and pitched it to the publisher, and their words were, "Why are you doing this? Why are you changing styles on us?" They like to know kind of what they're going to get and not be surprised. And I just basically said, "Trust me. It's not quite there yet. It's evolving." And they're like, "There's deadlines to this. We have to, stuff has to be done at this point." But the next round that I sent to them, they said, "Bravo, this is fantastic. We love this. Keep going." And I knew I had their blessing. And it was a lot of late nights. Our second son was born right in the middle of making this book, and I was already awake, and he was crying. So, I got the book done during that time. And you learn a lot by making it, and there are things I do differently now, which I'm working on a second book now.
Okay.
And but the overall, I'm so happy with how it turned out.
That's cool. Is the second book, is that Wolf Boy? Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, that's Wolf Boy.
So folks that may not be familiar, because I'll definitely include a link. There's a great video of you kind of going through the process, but walk people through from the concept to like what an actual page involved. Because you're kind of all over in your mediums, which is really cool.
Okay. It starts first with usually just a rough sketch, and then I'll take that sketch, blow it up, and put them all together with a bunch of other rough sketches that I have to pitch to the art director over at Hyperion Publishing.
Okay.
So what he's looking for is to make sure there's a good flow from image to image and where the words are going to fit on the page. And we make there are a lot of markups at that time, a lot of notes given. And once those are bought off on that really early pass, then I go through and do a drawing pass of everything. So it's just line work, and I'm really finalizing the composition for each page. Again, that gets bought off on, and there are notes, sometimes redos. But when a page is bought off and it's ready to go, what I do is I put the page underneath a pane of glass. So I've got, it's like maybe an 11 by 17 piece of glass that I get out of a frame at Home Depot or Aaron Brothers or something like that. And so you can see you have the glass on top and the image underneath. And so I'll start sculpting the clay on top of that image, bit by bit, always referring back to the sculpture or to the drawing. And there are times when the drawing gets lost completely in the clay, and I have to print out another drawing. And there's a lot. It's a big process.
Yeah.
And once that's done, and in the video, it's all time lapse, so it takes a lot longer than that to do. Once it's done, I light it I get a light in a certain position, which is really great with the clay because you get a lot for free. Instead of rendering all the shadows and light in Photoshop or watercolor, you get a lot of it for free with the clay. You just have to get the light in the right spot.
Now, are you using multiple lights, or is it mainly just one light source when you're doing it?
Mainly one light source. So
okay.
the best light source that I really have is around 10 o'clock in the morning in direct sunlight.
Oh, wow. Okay,
so
gotcha.
It's kind of, I learned over time, that's what you can still get information in the shadows, and the light parts aren't too blown out. And sometimes I'd throw a secondary light in there just if I want to get the shadows a little bit lighter.
Yeah.
But usually it was just the one light source.
Have you ever had that? Have you ever had the sculpture? Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Have you ever had the sculpture like surprise you? Because I can imagine putting light and maybe the shadows hit in ways you hadn't thought. Like, as anything, you're like, man, that's a lot cooler than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, let's see, with the Bugsy book, all the sculptures are fairly shallow.
Okay.
None of them are, if you turn the sculpture sideways, they're maybe a half-inch deep.
Okay.
And so at least for Bugsy, everything came out kind of how I hoped it would. You get the shadows, the right light, things like that. You do get some happy accidents here and there. But for Wolf Boy, I've started to make the sculptures a little deeper. So
okay.
Getting, deeper shadows. And definitely things are happening with that book that I didn't plan on that
That's
I'm
cool.
really excited about. So it's like a different approach.
Yeah.
So yeah, once it's photographed, then I basically email myself the JPEG of the photograph, and then I've got it in Photoshop, and I start to paint over top, and I paint it in layers, basically trying to maintain as much of that clay texture as possible. And through trial and error, what I found out is the more I try to paint out the texture and paint out any little happy accidents that happen in there, the more generic and uninteresting it looked. So I try to keep as many of what actually is there as possible. It just has a more raw look. And again, that's something I'm learning into the next book. I'm really learning into the next book. Gotcha.
That's so cool. I've seen maybe a couple posts you've done on Instagram, which your account is a ton of fun to check out. I think you had Doc that it looked like you had done in that same kind of style, with the clay style.
Yes.
Doc so have you gotten pegged as like the clay guy now? Like as like that's your style, even though that you don't want it to be?
It is starting to happen. And for now, at least, I really do love the clay. So we'll see how long that lasts. But I can talk a little bit about Moana. We can talk a little bit. So as I was working on the Bugsy book, I had just got hired to be the art director on Moana. Okay. And so I started to do a lot of the set designs in clay and photograph them and paint them in clay, just like I was doing in Bugsy.
Gotcha.
They were much more dimensional. They'd be real full three-dimensional clay sets that I was building at that point. But it was fun. So my office at times was absolutely covered in clay. And when I go home, there was clay on the table, on the carpet. My wife was not thrilled
That's awesome.
about that.
Yeah.
It definitely went over into my job, day job for sure.
That's cool. Now, would you fire these? Like, I mean, do you have these actual finished pieces still around now?
I do. I have them all, and I had an art show at a gallery called Nucleus Gallery in California, maybe 6 months ago, which was a lot of fun. And I had it was good. That was really good that I had that, because before that, all the clay was so uncooked and in pieces everywhere, and it was just a matter of time, for all that to be destroyed at some point with the kids. That would have happened. So it was good. I hooked them all. I got them in shadow boxes now, and they're safe and sound.
That's so cool. And I think you mentioned it a little bit just now, but I was talking with Noah Classic over at Pixar. It done all kinds of art direction stuff, and he mentioned, because he's put out a Cloud Country, one of his kids' books, but he would talk about how both his day job and his kind of side job, how they influence each other. So are you still finding that even as you're working now on future projects, and whether it's with Disney or future books, that those kind of speak into each other?
Absolutely. Yeah. It's so hard not to be influenced, by what you're doing at work. And even with Moana, I went to color palettes and things that I'd never ever tried before. They were, and I'm sure that some of that will influence some of the books coming up. Although Wolf Boy, I'm planning on doing completely black and white at this point anyway. I'm thinking about trying something different with it. I do feel, I mentioned before, it took me 10 years to art direct the first show. And in that time, I was in layout for 5 or 6 of those years, which was fantastic, because there are times I was working on 3 movies at the same time, all had unique styles. And what was great about that is that I've been able to, I could work on Moana or another Zootopia, something that had a unique style to it. And then mentally close the door on that, jump over to Bug Zoo and do something different there. And it's easy for me to do that now. And I don't think it would have been had I not had that experience in layout prior to that. We're seeing now, there's so much talent coming out of art school now, just incredible. Kids are really ready, artistically at least, to go ahead and jump right into the art director role a few years out of school. And, I have to say, if I was in college now, competing with the level of art coming out of schools now, I don't know if I'd make it. It's just, it took me a long time to get to where I was comfortable enough to be doing that. And it's mind blowing. It says a lot about the schools and the teachers and the students themselves and where they're going.
Yeah, that's so cool. Well, a couple questions as we're wrapping up. And you actually mentioned one already, your favorite book we like to ask everybody. But then do you have, how many kids do you have?
I have 2 sons.
2 sons. Do they have any favorite books now?
Yes. My youngest son, he's 18 months. His favorite book right now is House in the Night.
Okay.
And which is also one of my favorite books. I believe it won the Caldecott a couple of years back.
Okay.
Which Caldecott is a long-term dream of mine. That's like the top children's book, illustrated book in the country.
Yeah.
Every year. It's awesome.
Yeah.
One day maybe. And my son Benjamin, he is, for the longest time, it was a book called Mop Top, which I don't know if anyone would ever hear about that. He just loved it.
That's funny.
And it's an old book. It was written in the 30s. And but now he's all into Minecraft. So anything Minecraft. He's
That's
all
good.
about.
Do they read your book? And is it weird to have them go through it, or what's that like?
Eddie, that's a really good question. Can you believe it? I have not. The youngest boy, I have not read Bug Zoo to yet.
Okay.
I cannot believe I haven't done that.
Because this came out in January, right, of this year?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Gotcha.
I'm sorry. It came out in February of last year.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at a wrong date. Yeah, February last year.
Is that right? Let me think. Oh my gosh. Okay, so you could edit this, right? Yes. Sorry. It came out February 16th of 2016.
Got it. Okay. Sweet. It's some
year.
Yeah.
A long year.
Yeah, you've had a busy year, sounds like. So.
I know. So I'm going to read that to him tonight.
Okay, cool.
He's perfect to start reading it. And Ben, my other son Ben, is the little character in the book is named Ben.
Okay.
So he's named after my son. And he's a real mix of myself and my son. And Ben he was so excited that he was going to be in this book. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to his school. I'm going to be reading it at his school.
Okay.
And he's already embarrassed. He's like, Dad, don't say it's me. Don't tell anyone it's me.
That's awesome. That's so good.
Little stinker.
Good stuff. Well, And then where's the best place that folks can find you and the work that you have coming down the pipe?
Instagram. I'm very active on Instagram. I post almost every day, whether it's old Disney work that I've done. I do kind of a wide range of old work, or upcoming projects. I've started to post some Wolf Boy images there, and I love to hear feedback. When people have ideas or what inspires them. Instagram is such a great thing. So it's called Andy Harkness Art on Instagram.
That's cool.
And I also post on Twitter, but not quite as much. So what is it? It's Andy. What is my Twitter? Andy Harkness at Bug Zoo, something like that. Andy Harkness at Bug Zoo on Twitter.
Sounds good. We'll make sure to include those in the show notes. And Wolf Boy, is that a Halloween type release from the pictures, or when's that coming out?
Yes, I think it'd be more of a Halloween type release. And that book is all about fear and the perception of fear.
Okay.
And how fear is sometimes could just be nothing at all. It's just this little perception that could change overnight. But yeah, I'm thinking more Halloween release for that one.
Gotcha. Is that 2017? Is that coming out next year? Or do you guys have a date yet?
Not sure.
Okay.
No, there's not a date yet, but it would either be 2017 or 2018.
Gotcha. Well, cool. Well, I'm looking forward to get that one as well. My wife is a third grade teacher, so our copy of Bug Zoo will be in her classroom. So she'll be reading to her kids.
Excellent.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
Well, thanks so much for taking some time while you were driving. I appreciate it, and it's a blast. I mean, what you're doing at your day job's amazing, but then you still make time to make these amazing books that influence folks in totally different ways, and thank you so much for doing it.
Well, thank you for having me, Brandon. It was an absolute honor.